Hey everybody, this is Mr. Mama coming at you with another APUSH video. Once again, we're taking a look at topic 8.11, focusing in on the expansion of the civil rights movement in the 1960s and 70s. Last time we looked at the feminist movement, but today we're going to be moving on to another group, and that's going to be Latino Americans. Now, when we're talking about the struggle for equality, the struggle for civil rights for Latino Americans is going to be coming in many forms. It's going to be political, it's going to be social, but it's going to be cultural, but it's also going to be economic. And that's where we're going to start here. When we do talk about the fight for equality for Latino Americans, that fight for equality has historically been very closely intertwined with the plight of migrant farm workers. Now, once again, if you don't know what a migrant farm worker is, a migrant farm worker is somebody that is a farmer but doesn't own any land, doesn't rent any land. They are a professional crop picker. That's what they are. And since they are migrants, they basically travel across the country from farm to farm to farm picking crops. I mean, it might be 2 weeks picking apples, it might be a week picking lettuce, might be a month picking carrots, whatever that is. And that work is very hard work. It is back-breaking work. Work that pays extremely low wages and not unusually below minimum wage due to worker exploitation of undocumented workers and things like that. Remember, if you are a migrant farm worker, it is not unusual for you to be working in conditions where you are not going to have access to shade, you're not going to have access to restrooms, you may not have access to drinking water. It's pretty awful, miserable stuff. And because of that, because so many Latinos are in that field, this is going to be, once again, an issue for Latinos in general. Now, note, when we are talking about the fight for migrant farmers, we have to then talk about the impact of this gentleman right here. This is Cesar Chavez. Now, Cesar Chavez is going to be the child of Mexican immigrants into the United States, grew up in migrant farming. He was a child that was exploited by migrant farming. His family was exploited by migrant farming. So he knows this industry very well. And he will be, inspired by other civil rights activists of the 20th century, like Mahatma Gandhi and especially Martin Luther King Jr. And that means that, as far as Chavez is concerned, that if you want to make changes in migrant farming, you have to, bring attention to that, and you have to be willing to engage in protests. You have to engage in strategies that bring attention to the plight, but also making sure to do it in a nonviolent, peaceful way, as a way to gain sympathy for your cause. And as a result of that inspiration and that drive and those goals, we're going to be seeing Cesar Chavez do some pretty remarkable things. We're going to be seeing the creation of the UFW, the United Farm Workers. The UFW will go on strike on several occasions to bring attention to the plight of migrant farmers, try to get better benefits, better, safer working conditions, better pay, things like that. We also saw in the 1960s, Chavez organized a boycott on the grape industry, as you can see pictured right here. Once again, inspired by the African American civil rights movement, Chavez saw when he was younger that the bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama was effective in getting those buses integrated. So if that can work in integration for African Americans, it can also be, at least it should also be effective to try to bring attention to and improve the working conditions for Latino migrant farmers. So that's going to be very important. But beyond trying to fight for better working conditions and reducing exploitation amongst migrant farmers, there's many other concerns that are affecting the Latino community. Be it just staying with economically, the idea that Latinos have not been properly represented in many career fields, particularly white-collar career fields. That's been a problem. And, of course, part of that problem is lack of quality education historically. Though we tend to overlook it sometimes, Latinos have also, depending on what state you're looking at, have been victims of Jim Crow-like segregation in addition to African Americans. And we see that reflected in the quality of the schools, the funding of the schools, the performance of the students in those schools. And, the argument being is, how can we get better education for these children to therefore have better opportunities economically? But at the same time, though, not having to surrender your culture. For many Latinos, Spanish is a common language, though residing in the United States. And especially given the fact that, and once again, some of you may not be aware of this, there is no official language for the United States, even though, yes, obviously English is by far the most commonly spoken language in the United States. It's not the official language of the United States. There is none. And, given that reality, and given the reality that many, Latino Americans speak Spanish as a primary language or a first language, and in some cases only language, then why can't that be infused more in the educational system, especially if it can help with student performance and give students more of a sense of self-confidence? If you're talking about, a community where the schools are 90% plus Latino and the vast majority of these students can speak Spanish, well, why can't there be some infusion of bilingual education? When you're talking about lack of language understanding, you might do poorly on a test, not because you don't have skills or talent. It's just you maybe don't understand the language. That can be a problem. But also beyond that, the idea being is that for many Latinos, there's intense pressure to give up what it means to culturally be Latino, to be in the United States. And, the argument being is that, well, we don't see that quite as much pressure with, for example, Europeans that come over. For example, traditionally, a willingness to celebrate Irish culture with St. Patrick's Day and German culture with, say, Cincinnati's Oktoberfest, that when you look at the history of the United States and many of these, immigrant communities, many of these ethnic neighborhoods going back to the 19th century, it was very common to see things bilingual. Even in Cincinnati, parts of the inner city of Cincinnati pre-World War I, very common to see parts of the city that were bilingual, German and English. And so Latino Americans are going to be saying, well, why can't that also be protected for Latinos? Also, concerns about representation in government, concerns about immigration, concerns about racial profiling regarding immigration. These have all been, modern and to some degree historic challenges. Now, with that being said, some important gains have been made. Today, for example, we have embraced some, growing aspects of Latino culture. Obviously food is a great example of that, be it, more traditional Mexican street tacos like, tacos al pastor or, Puerto Rican mofongo. We've seen that be brought into the United States and become much more mainstreamed. We have seen programming that has catered to bilingual education. Some of you may have watched Dora the Explorer. Growing up, we've seen more of a willingness to embrace bilingualism in many of our stores, like for example Lowe's. Common Lowe's locations, those hardware stores commonly have bilingual signs. We have also, embraced other aspects of Latino culture, be it salsa dancing, Cinco de Mayo, and I know for many of you, Cinco de Mayo is maybe not the most, representative holiday, but many Americans also know Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead as well. So, some gains have been made. But in addition to that, we have also seen a growing presence in governments. For example, let me show you this picture right here. The center three individuals have all played a critical role in American government in recent years. You've got Julian Castro from Texas, a former congressman. You've got Marco Rubio, current U.S. Senator from Florida. You've also got, to the left of him, Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. So you have seen, some examples of, kind of breaking through into some of the most important avenues of government. That being said, though, obviously there are still modern challenges. There are still, the fact that Latinos are still underrepresented in government. That is a reality. We know that Latinos face, lower high school graduation and college acceptance rates than, whites, for example. We know that many Latino Americans, are victims of, immigration policies, and I'm not getting into the debate of illegal, legal immigration and that fight per se, but the simple idea being is that if you are Latino, even if you were born in the United States, you're going to be more likely to be profiled as an illegal or culturally assumed by many as illegal simply because you are Latino, and that's a problem. That's still a challenge that our society faces. And one of the things that we still have to remember, and this is critical, is that the problems, the challenges that affect the Latino American community are America's challenges. Those are America's issues. Latinos are the largest ethnic minority and growing in the United States. Right now, Latinos make up just short of 20% of the total U.S. population. And in the next 30, 40 years, Latinos are expected to make up about 1/3 of the U.S. Total U.S. population. So this is very, very significant. We're talking about tens of millions of people that are affected by this. So anyhow, we'll leave it there for now. We'll see you next time.